A continuación, tengo el placer de darle la bienvenida a Lejaim, quien en el segmento La Entrevista conversará con Janice Masur, quien se encuentra en Panamá y recientemente dio una muy interesante charla sobre la comunidad judía en Kampala, Uganda. Escuchemos.
Bienvenidos a otra edición del segmento de entrevistas de Lejaim, Panamá. Hoy tenemos una invitada muy especial que viajó desde Vancouver, Canadá, para visitar Panamá y logramos encontrar un espacio en su agenda. Janice, muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros hoy. Janice es la autora del libro Shalom Uganda, un libro que nos lleva al corazón de una pequeña comunidad europea en Kampala, Uganda, un mundo judío que la mayoría de las personas no sabía que existía, una comunidad que eventualmente desapareció, pero cuyo legado Janice ha logrado revivir con gran respeto a través de su libro. Welcome, Janice. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you.
You grew up in a very remote and small Jewish community, Kampala, Uganda, with only 23 families. What is the most vivid memory there, and how did your tiny community manage to flourish in a place where you had no rabbis, no Jewish institutions, no formal guidance? How did you do it?
That's a good question. Thank you, Leah. Well, I think one of my most vivid memories was I was most probably about 8 years old, and it was Pesach. And the adults sent myself and a little boy outside to watch for the moon, the very first little bit of the moon, the star, and then we could start the Pesach ceremony. And while we were waiting, I remember seeing a chameleon in the hedge. And then suddenly we saw it and we ran inside and we started the Pesach celebration.
Which year was this?
This was most probably about 1955 or 4.
Of course, you could not like go into Google and Google like the time or anything back then. So
no, old-fashioned, you could say, old-fashioned. So the sense of connection in Kampala for the Jewish people was very close-knit, because we were, as you say, only 23 families. We hatched about 17 Jewish children. We didn't have a rabbi and so on. But we would gather on weekends together. We would have holidays together. If a new child came to school, the teacher would say, "This child is Jewish." I would run home and tell my parents, and then there would be some sort of communication, and those people would be acknowledged into the community and would join in. That's how it sort of happened. It was very ad hoc, because the closest place for us to communicate with was Nairobi, and that was about 350 miles away.
Wow.
Yes.
And I'm guessing that those gatherings actually happen at your home or everyone's home, and just from home to home. So it's incredible to imagine Jewish life flourishing mainly inside just people's homes, you know, putting what really a community is all about. And everyone is taking care of each other's children, I presume, you know, because that's what happens in a small community like that. And your book describes how the Kampala Jewish community eventually faded away. What do you think happened there, and what can we learn today from that?
Well, it faded away quite quickly, actually. For my own family, it was when we were stuck in Uganda, because my father was a German Jewish refugee. He met my mother in Palestine of the day and took out Palestinian citizenship, and according to the British, he was alien. And so we were stuck until 1961, when my father finally got British citizenship. So we couldn't move anywhere. But it was important to move because my parents wanted me to go to university. And where would I go to university? Couldn't go to England, couldn't go to South Africa, because it was felt that it would be like jumping out of the frying pan into the fire politically. and so we went to New Zealand. So that was one family gone. Some of the families had English connections, British connections, because they had been working in Uganda as a bank manager or as a university professor teaching anatomy or a secretary, whatever, but on a contract. So they would go back to England on holiday and then come back and do another contract. There was no need to create a building or a synagogue because nobody was actually going to stay there very long. So gradually those people then went to England, Australia, New Zealand as in our case. I don't think anybody went to Israel, funnily enough, but several of the families went to England. That was most probably the main country.
And you yourself, I mean, when you mention all the places you've been, you certainly experienced Jewish life in places that, at least for us, are very remote, and to an extent, some of them with very small Jewish communities. You know, Eritrea, where you were born, and actually, my daughter and I had a lot of fun looking for Eritrea on her glove and learning about it. Uganda, New Zealand, and now Vancouver. So most places where Jewish life was probably very, very small, at least in terms of community. So today, how does have shaped your sense of identity, and what message would you share with other Jews living in diverse and small communities?
Yes. Well, actually, in Eritrea, there was a large Sephardic Jewish community at that time, but Ashkenazi and Sephardic didn't mix at that time. In Vancouver we do, but not that time in that place. And in New Zealand there had been large Jewish communities because there had been gold rushes, and the synagogue in Christchurch was very large. They then had to sell it. So again, this sort of going and coming. What would I learn from that? I would learn that Jewish community is important. I would learn that I need to be independent and strong, because places that I've always lived have been not really acknowledging of Jewish people. For instance, in New Zealand, if I had wanted to stay and marry a Jewish man, I had dated the only two Jewish men in Christchurch where I lived, Christchurch, Jewish, and if I wanted to, I would have had to have gone to Melbourne in Australia in order to be in a larger community. So I have learned to blend into the non-Jewish community, and in my younger life, I found it much easier to identify as a non-Jewish person. I always knew inside that I was Jewish, but to the outside, it just made life easier.
Gracias por acompañarnos hoy en otro segmento de Lejaim, Panamá. Espero que haya sido una conversación inspiradora y que todos puedan leer el libro de Shalom Uganda por Janice. Muchas gracias.